Hi guys, my name is Celine Cosita, and today I will be discussing my favorite part of the brain, which is the amygdala. So, why in the world is the amygdala my favorite part of the brain? Well, first of all, as we all know, the amygdala is heavily impacted by emotions, and we all know that emotions can be very crazy and unpredictable. And over this course, I found it very fascinating that this one little itty bitty structure in our brain can have control over such a wide variety of emotions. I also have an interest in emotional disorders and just psychological disorders in general. When I get older, I want to be a child psychiatrist, and I feel like in a lot of the cases that I will be seeing, I will be dealing with children who have emotional disorders. It's interesting to learn now in my studies what is the culprit of these disorders. And lastly, as we've all learned, the amygdala is heavily impacted by Alzheimer's disease. I have personally been affected by Alzheimer's disease with individuals in my family having it, so it's interesting to learn now what was going on in their brains when they had this disease. So, what is the amygdala? So, the amygdala is a little almond like structure that's in your temporal lobes. You actually have two of them, there's one in each hemisphere of your brain, and they are connected with your limbic system, which makes sense because the limbic system is heavily contributed by emotions and behaviors. So what does it do? So first of all, it interacts with the hypothalamus to trigger a fight or flight response, basically triggering our sympathetic nervous system. It helps us detect danger before we even have time to process the immediate threat. So basically, say if you're walking through a field and you see a snake, your amygdala will activate before you even have time to comprehend what's going on. Therefore, it's basically just trying to keep us safe and out of harm's way. Second, it controls aggression and helps us perceive emotions. So not only does it help us keep our cool in certain situations, but it also helps us read the emotions of others. It works with our hippocampus to form memories about strong emotional events, and it also heavily impacts the fear response. And later on, I will talk about what Kluver-Bucy syndrome is. So why in the world do we need one? Well, like I said before, it helps keeps us safe. So say if we were younger and we were bitten by a dog, it will help us in the future be more cautious and more active and aware around animals just to help keep us safe. And it also gives us the ability to feel emotions and perceive them in others. So not only does it help us produce emotions like sadness, anxiety, depression, anything like that, but it also helps us perceive them in others. So it gives us an insight into what others are feeling, and it helps us detect if someone is upset with us, if they're fearful of something, etc. So like every part of the brain, it has its abnormalities. So having a smaller amygdala or having it removed has been shown to produce reduction in the ability to perceive fear. So this is where the Kluver-Bucy syndrome comes in. So scientists in the 1900s were doing experiments on rats to kind of figure out what the amygdala actually did in the brain. And so in some of the rats, they had taken the amygdala completely out of the brain, and they found that these rats were not only able to perceive fear, but they also weren't able to produce it. So they were basically fearless rats doing these radical things that in a normal rat they would never ever do. On the flip side, if you have an overactivated amygdala, it leads to more risk-taking behaviors. So this is why mostly in teens and adolescents, you'll see more risk-taking behaviors, because during this time period in their life is when their amygdala is overactivated. And lastly, it can lead to disorders like depression, anxiety, and Alzheimer's disease. And here are my sources, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation on the amygdala.